Good morning, everyone. Today we'll deal with a lesson titled Forgetting, and it is by the Irish essayist Robert Lynch. So, when we talk about Robert Wilson Lynch, we hear of him as a very urbane essayist and a very strong Irish nationalist. Robert Lynch was born in Belfast, and he was the son of a Presbyterian church moderator. That means he was a Protestant, and he began his career as a journalist in a newspaper titled the Northern Whig, which was in Belfast itself. But he moved to London in 1901, and in the beginning, he wrote drama criticism for a magazine called Today, and it was edited by famous writer Jerome K. Jerome. When you think about Jerome K. Jerome, I hope you remember Three Men in a Boat. Later on, he joined as the staff of the Daily News. And Daily News later came to be called the News Chronicle. And he was the literary editor of News Chronicle from 1912 to 1947. So he wrote weekly essays for the newspaper titled The New Statesman. And he wrote it under a pseudonym, under a pen name, YY. And that went on from 1913 to 1945. So he has written around 30 books, and the most important ones among them are Home Life in Ireland, because he was an Irish nationalist, Ireland a Nation, The Art of Letters, and Dr. Johnson and Company. These are some of his very famous works. He died in 1949, and he was buried in Belfast itself. Now, for us, we look at Robert Lynch as an essayist, because we're going to study the essay Forgetting, written by him. So, as I told you earlier, he was one of the greatest essayists of the 20th century. And what he has contributed to English prose is really memorable. He followed the footsteps of Oliver Goldsmith, Charles Lamb, R.L. Stevenson as an essayist. He wrote very charming and delightful essays, and his essays are those which cover a wide range of topics. And he was one person who could easily write on any subject. And most of his essays would deal with the human aspect, the kind of problems that human beings go through, the kind of joys, the kind of sorrows, everything. It is just a kind of mixture of, you could say, human life, or a slice of human life. He considered the very ordinary and familiar aspects of life as fit subject for his essays. Like when we look at the topic forgetting, it's a very ordinary topic. It's a very ordinary aspect also for humans, right? And he has written about that. Now, he found such a topic fit for his essays. So we can say that he was a person who really knew what life was about, and he wanted to convey to the people around him the aspects of life, the kind of forgotten aspects of life, or the aspects of life which people usually wouldn't touch. Another aspect of Robert Lynch is that he was an autobiographical essayist. So when we read through his essays, we understand his personality, we understand the humor that he had, his philosophical, reflective, his retrospective moods, the light-heartedness that he harbored, right? So when we read his essays, we understand that he goes back. There's a lot of nostalgia. He recalls his early memories, right? And he always gains the sympathy and affection of his readers, because whatever subject matter he dealt with, he would always give a personal touch to his essays. Now, when you look at some of the important features of Lynch's essays, we can just point at humor, irony, satire as important features. Because when we read about Robert Lynch, or when we read Robert Lynch's essays, we understand that people love him for his delightful humor. Because according to him, humor is one of the saving graces of life. It is the support and sustenance of life, right? So not only is he adept at bringing humor in his essays, he was also a master of irony and satire, right? he is ranked as a very gentle satirist, right? Kind of poking fun at the frailties and foibles of mankind. So he exposes the kind of aspects that human beings usually forget, the kind of weaknesses that human beings have. Now he tries to bring that out in a very gentle manner. That's why he's called a gentle satirist. When we study about the style that Robert Lind used, we understand that he's used a very easeful, a very graceful, and a very lively style. So his language is quite beautiful, very dignified throughout the essays. Now there are no purple patches, no heightening of color. It's just a very easy and lively style. It's an elegant style because he never digresses. Digression means he never deviates from the main topic, right? So throughout his essay or throughout the work that he produces, we understand that there is a unity of thought, there is a cohesion, right? There are no inconsistencies, right? We find unity of thought, we find felicity of diction, the kind of words he uses, very beautiful words and very simple words, but very elegant words. There is spontaneity of utterance and there is conversational ease, right? And most of the words he uses in his essays are very colloquial. Now, when we look at the essay that we have been given to study, Forgetting, Robert Lind writes about the root causes of forgetting. And he also explains what items are usually forgotten by people. So we can call this, or according to Robert Lind, forgetting is actually a paradoxical reality, right? So he says that, the efficiency of human memory is something very amazing. But at the same time, man also forgets, right? So it's a paradoxical reality. Now we can just look at the essay and I will just read the essay and we'll understand what it is about. So I'll just read, please listen to this. And if you have the essay with you, you can look into your textbooks. Otherwise, just listen to this. A list of articles, it starts like this. A list of articles lost by railway travelers and now on sale at a great London station has been published. And many people who read it have been astonished at the absent-mindedness of their fellows. If statistical records were available on the subject, however, I doubt whether it would be found that absent-mindedness is common. It is the efficiency rather than the inefficiency of human memory that compels my wonder. Modern man remembers even telephone numbers. He remembers the addresses of his friends. He remembers the days of good vintages. He remembers appointments for lunch and dinner. His memory is crowded with the names of actors and actresses and cricketers and footballers and murderers. He can tell you what the weather was like in a long past August and the name of the provincial hotel at which he had a vile meal during summer. In his ordinary life, again, he remembers almost everything that he is expected to remember. How many men in all London forget a single item of their clothing when dressing in the morning? Not 1 in 100. Perhaps not 1 in 10,000. How many of them forget to shut the front door when leaving the house? Scarcely more. And so it goes on through the day, almost everybody remembering to do the right things at the right moment till it is time to go to bed. And then the ordinary man seldom forgets to turn off the lights before going upstairs. So in the first kind of paragraph, we understand that Robert Lind is so amazed by the efficiency of human memory. He says that modern man remembers telephone numbers, names of actors, actresses, cricketers, footballers, murderers. That means he can remember almost everything in life, right? He also gives example. He says that man does not forget a single item of his clothing when dressing. No one forgets to shut the front door when leaving the house, right? So he says that what he wants to elaborate here, or what he wants to emphasize here, is that the institution of family survives in modern cities because ordinary people have efficient memory power, right? Everything, they don't forget anything. They don't forget to close the door. They remember to turn off the light. That means people survive in modern cities or anywhere in the world because they have efficient memory power. God has blessed people with amazing memory power, right? Then he goes on to say, there are, it must be admitted, some matters in regard to which the memory works with less than its usual perfection. It is only a very methodical man, I imagine, who can always remember to take the medicine his doctor has prescribed for him. This is the more surprising because medicine should be one of the easiest things to remember. As a rule, it is supposed to be taken before, during, or after the meals, and the meal itself should be a reminder of it. The fact remains, however, that few but the mortal giants remember to take their medicines regularly. Modern psychologists tell us that we forget things because we wish to forget them, and it is because of their antipathy to pills and potions. Antipathy means dislike, that many people fail to remember them at the appointed hours. This does not explain, however, how it is that a lifelong devotee of medicines like myself is as forgetful of them as those who take them most unwillingly. The very prospect of a new and widely advertised cure all delights me. Yet, even if I have the stuff in my pockets, I forget about it as soon as the hour approaches at which I ought to swallow it. Chemists make their fortunes out of medicines people forget to take. Right? He goes on to say, that there are certain matters where human memory works less than its usual perfection. And the best example he gives is that people forget to take their medicines, right? They don't forget to take their meals, and medicines are usually taken before, during, or after meals, right? And then how can you forget it? Because when you take your meal, you need to remember about your medicines, right? But usually we see that many people forget to take their medicines. They don't forget to take their meals, but they forget to take their medicines, right? And according to Robert Lynch, psychologists say that we forget things because we wish to forget them. So he says people don't like medicines. They have an antipathy towards medicines, and that is why they forget them. And here you see the autobiographical element. He humorously says that he, who is a lifelong devotee of medicines, like he is a person who has been having medicines throughout his life, even he forgets. Right? And he goes on to say in a very, in a marked humorous way that the chemists make a lot of money because people forget to take medicines and their illness is not cured, right? People forget to take medicines and that is why they don't get cured. And then what happens? They buy more and more medicines. So who becomes rich? The chemists become very rich. So he uses that in a very humorous manner. We come on. The commonest form of forgetfulness, I suppose, occurs in the matter of posting letters. So common is it that I am always reluctant to trust a departing visitor to post an important letter. So little do I rely on his memory that I put him on his oath before handing the letter to him. As for myself, anyone who asks me to post a letter is a poor judge of character. Even if I carry the letter in my hand, I am always past the first pillar box. Pillar box is the post office or the post box, right? Before I remember that I ought to have posted it. I'm sure most of you would not have seen the red post boxes, which were there. It's become archaic now. It was there long back. We used to post our letters in that. Today it's all emails and everything. And if at all you need to post a letter, we go to the post office, right? So, weary of holding it in my hand, I then put it for safety in one of my pockets and forget all about it. After that, it has an adventurous life till a long chain of circumstances leads to a number of embarrassing questions being asked, and I am compelled to produce the evidence of my guilt from my pocket. This, it might be thought, must be due to a lack of interest in other people's letters, but that cannot be the explanation, for I forget to post even of the very few letters that I myself remember to write. Right? So Robert Lynch in this paragraph says that the commonest form of forgetfulness is in posting letters. Many people forget to post letters, right? So he humorously says that if anyone asks him to post a letter, he's a poor judge of character, because Robert Lynch never posts a letter, even if he keeps it in his pocket for a number of days, right? So he says that he would forget. He would hold it in his hand. He would pass by the post box. Then he would remember. Then again the second post box, and once it passes by only he would remember. So he would get tired of holding it in his hand, and he would put it into his pocket. Then he would forget about it. Then people would ask him questions: "Have you posted? Have you posted?" And it would be so embarrassing, to tell them that I had forgotten to post your letter. And he says it's not because I don't have an interest in other people's letters. Even when it is my letters, when it comes to my letters, I hardly write letters. He says I don't remember to write letters, and even when I remember to write the very few that I write, I forget to post them also. He comes, let's proceed. As for leaving articles in trains and in taxis, I am no great delinquent in such matters. I can remember almost anything except books and walking sticks, and I can often remember even books. Walking sticks, I find it quite impossible to keep. I have an old-fashioned taste for them, and I buy them frequently, but no sooner do I pay a visit to a friend's house or go a journey in a train than another stick is on its way into the world of the lost. I dare not carry an umbrella for fear of losing it. To go through life without ever having lost an umbrella, has even the grimmest-jawed umbrella carrier ever achieved this? So he says that, he is not a delinquent. Delinquent means when it comes to leaving articles in taxis and trains, he usually remembers. He's not a very forgetful person with regard to that. He says, I remember everything except books and walking sticks. All the others I remember. Books and walking sticks I forget. And he says, most often I remember books, right? But he says, walking sticks and umbrellas are something which I usually forget. And he says that he's got a penchant for walking sticks. He loves buying walking sticks. But what happens is whenever he goes to a friend's house or he travels by train, he leaves a walking stick and it goes into the world of the lost. And he says umbrellas. He says, this is a very funny statement, to go through life without ever having lost an umbrella. Has even the grimmest-jawed umbrella carrier ever achieved this? A person who's very serious and he always has this feeling, no, I will not leave my umbrella. Even such a person, at least once in his life, hasn't he lost an umbrella? I am sure most of us also would have done that. I remember when my children were small, when they were in kindergarten, the items that they kept on forgetting, one was umbrella, one was water bottle, one was tiffin box, one was pencil box. All these things would be, sometimes missing. They would forget to bring it back from school. And, it's like when we think of that now, it is so humorous. It's so funny. I remember the time of, remember the number of water bottles I bought for my eldest son when he was in LKG. Later on, as the number kept increasing, I also started losing my cool because that was something which he would forget. And these are some items which we forget. It's not knowingly, unknowingly, we forget that. Okay, when we continue with the lesson. Few of us, however, have lost much property on our travels through forgetfulness. The ordinary man arrives at his destination with all his bags and trunks safe. The list of articles lost in trains during the year suggests that it is the young rather than the adult who forget things, and that sportsmen have worse memories than their ordinary serious-minded fellows. A considerable number of footballs and cricket bats, for instance, were forgotten. This is easy to understand, for boys returning from the games have their imaginations still filled with a vision of the playing field, and their heads are among the stars or their hearts in their boots as they recall their exploits or their errors. They're abstracted from the world outside them. Memories prevent them from remembering to do such small prosaic things as take the ball or the bat with them when they leave the train. For the rest of the day, they are citizens of dreamland. The same may be said, no doubt, of anglers who forget their fishing rods. Anglers are fishermen, right? Or people who go for fishing. Anglers are generally said, I do not know with what justification, to be the most imaginative of men, and the man who is inventing magnificent lies in the journey home after a day's fishing is bound to be a little absent minded in his behavior. The fishing rod of reality is forgotten by him as he daydreams over the fears of the fishing rod of utopia. Utopia is dreamland, an imaginary land. His loss of memory is really a tribute to the intensity of his enjoyment in thinking about his day's sport. He may forget his fishing rod as the poet may forget to post a letter because his mind is filled with more glorious matter. Absent mindedness of this kind seems to me all but a virtue. The absent minded man is often a man who is making the best of life and therefore has no time to remember the mediocre. Who would have trusted Socrates and Coleridge to post a letter? They had souls above such things, right? So he says that the list of articles lost by railway travelers has been published in the first beginning of the essay, he says. And and many people who read the list, they are so astonished at the absent-mindedness of the people, right? Because most of these travelers are young sportsmen and they have forgotten their cricket bats, their footballs. And the reason Lynch gives us, he says that these boys returning from the games have their imaginations filled with the vision of the playing field. See, defeated players are very sad and they think about their lost opportunities and failures. Whereas the victorious boys have their heads among the stars, thinking about their achievements. So both these groups are in a dream world and they forget to take their cricket bats and footballs when leaving the train because he called them citizens of dreamland. He also speaks about anglers. Anglers are also called citizens of dreamland or the fishermen. They are daydreamers. They forget to take the fishing rod when they go home in the evening. Why? Because their minds are filled with matter more glorious, right? They think about the fishing expedition, the fish they have caught, the fish they have lost, and they're in some other dreamland or some other world in an utopia, right? So, according to Lind, both sportsmen and anglers are absent-minded people. And Lind also says that such absent-mindedness is a blessing because these people forget their unhappiness and they live in the dream world of utopia. For example, if the boys have lost a match, they kind of dream and dream and dream and they live in a dream world and they soon forget their utopia. If the anglers have not been able to catch much fish, they dream about catching fish. So they always live in a kind of utopia. It's an ideal world. Utopia means an ideal world where everything is perfect, right? So, and that because they live in a world of dreams, or they live in the dream world of utopia, they become quite absent-minded. And this absent-minded can be a blessing because they usually forget their unhappiness when they're in this dream world. So according to Lind, great thinkers, poets, philosophers were absent-minded people because their minds were full of ideals and high ideals and imaginations of ideal things. So, he says, Socrates, the great Greek philosopher, Samuel Taylor Coleridge, the great English poet, all of them are absent-minded people. You cannot expect them to post letters because posting letters are mediocre things and they had souls above such mediocre things, and they were people who were making the best of life. So they could not afford to think about mediocre things. So he says it is not wise to expect people like Socrates and Coleridge to post letters. Okay, I hope this is clear to you. We will stop here for today. If you have any questions, you can